Hi, welcome to Old School with Patrick Rooney, the podcast where old school wisdom is new again. I explore natural health, success, and freedom with my amazing guests. All right, welcome. This is Patrick Rooney with Old School with Patrick Rooney. I'm doing a series of podcasts right now, that deal with success. I'm finding friends of mine and people that I know out there who are successful in one way or another. And since COVID has come about and people have been just so shackled and sent back to their houses, a lot of people are out of work, things of that nature. We've been kind of scared into not really functioning at full level. And I want people to function at full level. And I want to put people in front of you that can kind of help you do that and overcome some hurdles that you may be going through. So with that in view, I invited my friend Mike Chandler on here, who's a really smart dude and a very successful guy. And he's very well spoken too. So I think he's perfect to bring on a podcast like this because he can help you out with some of the ways that you can become more successful. So let me bring Mike on. Mike, welcome. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Patrick?
I'm doing well, man. So, hope the family's well. Everybody's doing well?
The family's doing good. If you could just have a conversation with my wife and make sure that when she wakes me up in the morning, she gives that same intro each time, I'd appreciate that.
It'll make you feel good every day, huh?
Right. I need my ego boosted.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, I want to, you were nice enough to send me some info over, and I want to kind of dig into that a little bit and just see where it goes. First of all, Mike is the owner of ASICSoft, and it's a technology and staffing and consulting company. He's also the part owner and co-founder of VeriFast Technologies. And you're in what's considered Silicon Valley, I think, right, where you're part of?
Right.
Okay, very good. VeriFast is a technology consulting and training company for semiconductor, which is computer chip industry. A little bit more on Mike before we start as well. Business leader and an entrepreneur. You are a senior recruiter with over 15 years experience focused on engineering, IT, biotech, and more. I really want to drill down on how you learned a lot of this stuff. You're also an owner and creator of some LinkedIn groups. You have the ASICSoft SOC FPGA Engineers, which has 50,000 members. That's amazing. And also another LinkedIn group, Embedded Systems Group, with 50,000 members as well. You got a busy life, man.
Yeah, busy, but good.
Good. Let me get into, I want to start from the beginning. I usually like to do this with success-oriented situations. I want to start with, how do people, I often wonder when people are doing well in life, where it came from. And I have no doubt that it usually has something to do with a very good beginning, good parenting. And I think without good parenting, people are starting from way back, they're almost at a severe disadvantage and they have to overcome a lot of things. So if you have good parenting to begin with, which it seems like you have had, you're already, it's funny, a lot of people like to talk about white privilege, right? Because, in general, successful white people often have good parenting, which is true. I don't consider that privilege. I consider that a blessing. It's a blessing to have great parenting, and everybody should want that for everybody else. So how important would you say that kind of getting that start with having solid parents? Your parents, I think you said, have been married for 50 plus years. How important has that been in your life in general? Do you notice that now? Did you know that growing up, or do you notice it more looking back?
Oh, good question. Well, everything you just mentioned about where you start is where you finish. There's a lot of truth to that. And so if we can have a culture that puts that as a primary objective, where let's create a culture in all communities where parenthood is at the forefront of families, we probably erase a lot of our problems.
Amen.
I don't think that's the objective of the show, but
no,
I'll make that statement.
It is important. It's hugely important.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you're a kid, growing up, you don't think of anything other than this is my situation. You
Yeah.
don't take the time to really, maybe when you're in your mid-teens and later, you start recognizing your situation. Probably if you're having great parents, you don't recognize it until you're much older. I'm sure if you're having a bad family situation, you recognize that things are out of whack compared to others, and that probably hurts and has a lot of pain. But as far as having good parents, I didn't really recognize that that made a difference or didn't make a difference until I was older,
Yeah.
probably in my 20s, right? Especially as you get married and start a family and you start looking at the world and realizing, okay, well, why are some more successful than others? And certainly a starting position helps. And you can call it privilege, you can call it blessing. If you grow up in a household, regardless of color or race, where you're from, where you were born, in America especially, if you grow up with a loving, committed mother and father
Yeah.
who then decide to have children after they enter that relationship, the probability of failure in America is almost non-existent.
Yeah. That's amazing.
So that's a huge blessing that you can give to your children, and people can start planning for that now, way before they have children.
Yeah.
Right. I wish that was part of our culture, but it's not.
It really needs. I hope we bring that back. That's part of what I hope old school does, is bring back some really nice old traditions that have worked for thousands of years. You said that your mother was stayed at home, I think the first 10 years of your life, right? That you were, and the impact that made on you to have her there and keeping things very stable in your household.
Yeah, certainly having a mother staying at home makes a big difference. I mean, we chose to do that with our children. My wife is now, our kids are in their teens, and so my wife is starting to look at different work arrangements. She helps out with our company on some level, but her primary responsibility is staying at home and being a great mother, and creating that environment where kids feel safe, loved, and nurtured. Doesn't mean that it can't be done well other ways. I look at that as a blessing I had, having my mom being at home for my early years.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing your wife, she's done an amazing job, and that's really important as well. In family, getting married and having somebody who hopefully sees things eye to eye with you, understands your values, and is willing and happy to implement the kind of values that you're setting forward. That's another huge one. And I know people have that struggle sometimes, having married to someone or having someone they're with who they're at kind of loggerheads with. They're not in agreement, that everything they do is kind of like broken up.
Sure.
Yeah.
My wife is absolutely the heartbeat of our family. She's amazing. I am who I am a lot because of who she is. And you talk about starting positions. My wife, unfortunately, was the opposite side of that, a very dysfunctional, very bad situation growing up. Yeah. But she's one of the few that broke the chains and decided to make a conscious decision to live her life not seeking self-aggrandizement, but putting things on hold for many years before she decided to, get married, have kids, these things. And she's got a beautiful life. When you talk about success, success is we always look at success where somebody is today.
Right.
But you have to measure success not just where somebody is today, but from where they started from.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Two people might be in the same place, but one person ran 100 yards, one person ran 100 miles.
Right.
Right? But they're both in the same spot. And my wife ran 100 miles. She's amazing.
Yeah, I've got a lot of admiration for her, for sure. And people like her who have overcome those kinds of things, because people can take their hand at a bad deck, a hand, so to speak, give them a bad hand, and they can use that to be bitter about things and just complain. We know a lot of people like that. They will just complain their whole lives away. But to take the lemon and make it into lemonade, so to speak, that's what people admire in this life. I think, and like you say, you were mentioning, I was going to get to it a little bit later, but I'll just mention it now to start with. You were talking about some of your favorite books, and you reminded me of Up From Slavery, which is one of your favorite books from Booker T. Washington. But it reminds me of a guy who's born a slave with like nothing, whatsoever. And he had everything against him. And yet he was able to make his life bloom, and the people around, not only his life, but look what he did with Tuskegee Institute. I mean,
Sure.
all these lives of so many of these young men that he brought in, he just changed their lives one guy. And I think, that's another thing I've been thinking of lately. I did a video recently on a lot of the people who are successful now and really are making a difference. A lot of times are not the traditional people we think of, the white male necessarily. In your case, it is true. But in a lot of cases, I'm seeing people who are kind of coming up, who are black, another race. They may not even have been born in America, but they've come as an immigrant. And those people really appreciate, I think because they've gone through so much hell in many ways, they really appreciate what they have now, and they've turned into forces that are just galvanizing people. It's quite amazing to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so in the technology industry, there's a lot of immigrants who find extreme success in technology. And so a good friend of mine who was a big leader in the semiconductor industry, he's from India. And I look at the individuals that I meet from that country are all impressive to me. I don't think I have yet to meet one that hasn't overcome huge obstacles, right?
Yeah.
We talk about leaving our family and going away to college, 50 miles away or 100 miles away.
Right.
These people are going 10,000 miles away, and they're eating almost they live very meager lives, rice and beans, what they say, right? So, and they do that for years and years. And another friend of mine, he said, you have to understand that the amount of pressure that's on us as the first child, for example, that comes to America to study, that first child isn't just coming for themselves. They're coming for the following siblings, and each of the siblings take on the responsibility to get a good job and then help pay for the following siblings and the rest of the family. It's an amazing delayed gratitude point of view.
I was wondering how that worked. Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe my little story is just one story, and maybe it's not that way expanded upon the whole community, but that's what I've experienced.
Yeah.
And I have a huge amount of respect for immigrants that are coming here and they work it crazy hard of all types. And there's so much opportunity here. It's just unfortunate that we have a certain system, a certain faction of our system that teaches bitterness instead of teaching opportunity.
I know,
right?
So wrong.
And
so wrong.
Yeah, because look, I understand everybody wants it to be fair, but it isn't fair. Some people have more talent than others. Some people can sing better than others. Some people can write code better than others. Some people can do business better than others. But at the end of the day, I don't know what the statistics are, but I think they're just extremely high. That if you grow up, stay off drugs, finish high school, and get married before children, their probability of ending up in poverty in America is like 2 or 3% or less.
Yeah,
it's almost non-existent.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah, I know people have discussed that as well, and that makes a lot of sense. Let me ask you, since we're talking about India here a little bit, what is it exactly that is there a particular one thing? Because it's obviously, you look at a very, very underdeveloped in many ways country, very poor country. A lot of India is a very, very poor country. And yet I see people coming to America, a lot of people, especially in the technology. What is it about, number one, what is it in the culture that's bringing that out? And why technology? Why are there so many people from India who have done so well in technology?
Well, let me go back first, and I'll answer that question. I don't want to leave Booker T. Washington out of this conversation. So if I had to pick an individual, as one of my heroes, that guy, from what I've read, is one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Right.
Me too.
And I look at life as, I don't really care how successful somebody is, but here's an individual whose mindset was right.
Yeah.
So, he could have just completely embraced the misery of his position, right? How he started.
Oh, yeah.
And even when he started having success, he could have been ultimately incredibly bitter at the world. And make no mistake about it, he wasn't blind and naive about the environment, the situation and the environment at the time. But he chose to say, what can I do to affect change in my life and those around me?
Right.
Right. And he touched those lives. And then those individuals touched other lives, and it grew organically.
Right.
Instead of trying to put some giant mass movement and with just a bunch of pretty words, the guy's work ethic was second to none, and just did everything he could to be successful in the harshest of circumstances, and did it with a happy heart the entire time. So
Amen.
I look to that guy as inspiration.
Amen.
Back to your question about India, there is a dichotomy, though. You have to understand that we are seeing the best of the best for the most part, at least from an educational perspective. And generally, those who are highly educated, especially in third world countries, maybe come from pretty strong families already, and maybe not from the poverty. So they're already getting a degree in India, their bachelor's degree. They probably have some financial resources so they can come here to America. And so we're importing extremely bright individuals who are already shown to be successful, at least from an educational perspective, right? We're not having immigrants mostly from India, it would seem, that are non-educated, and there's so many people in that country. But to answer your question is, why are we seeing so much success of that community? And this is just, of course, all opinion, right? I don't have any complete facts to back this up, but my experience shows me that I think it was in 1992 or 1994, sometime in the early 90s, the country adopted a more free enterprise capitalist point of view for their country, right? And so they got rid of a lot of the protectionism. Right? So if you look at how they were producing textiles, like clothing and fabrics, they were still using outdated looms, right? Where you would weave fabric on this 500-year-old type machine,
right, and
not using actual electronic or mechanical machines. Very quickly, when there was no reason for them to change, because they weren't allowing any outside competition. So if there's no outside competition, then you don't have to worry about improving your processes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, when they started with the more capitalist point of view, then outside competition started coming in, and I'm sure there was a large faction of individuals. This is going to be horrible for us. But what we've learned is that with competition, it usually rises everybody up, because then that individual has to be more creative. It's not that they weren't working hard. I don't want to say, well, they had to work harder, but they had to use their creative juices to say, well, how do I compete and how do I win? Right? And there's not a finite pie. The pie keeps expanding.
Right.
Right. And so that country, by choosing that, has lifted at least 100 or 200 million or more people out of what they would consider their poverty line. We may not consider that in our worldview, but their worldview, they've lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty in about 25 years. It's amazing what that country has done.
That is
right.
So why tech? I mean, what is it about tech? How come so many in tech?
I don't know. I don't know. All I can assume is maybe there was an initiative from an educational perspective to push technology back in the early 90s.
Right.
I don't know the exact answer to that question.
Okay. Let me move forward a little bit or backwards, depending on how you want to look at this. I saw some things in your bio information that you sent me that kind of stuck out to me that were interesting. As I said, of course, your parents being great role models, that was a huge one. One of the other ones, here's one of them. Your first job. Okay, your first job was mowing lawns. And that's a job that you did and you took. And, in order to do that kind of job, you're not going and getting hired with a piece of paper and, filling something out, waiting for someone to get back with you or whatever. It's an initiative type of thing, and you're basically creating your own job. And I've always kind of admired that. I never really did. I did a little bit of paper route stuff when I was a kid, but I always had wished I had done more of those types of things, starting up some type of little business that I could, do around the around my neighborhood. How important was that to you to just, is that something that your dad encouraged you to do, or parents encouraged you to go out and do that to start with?
Yeah, I would, I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure my parents told me to get off my rear end and go do something. If I had to guess, it probably started with, the neighbor coming to my dad saying, "Hey, I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks. Can you have your boy hit our lawn when he's doing yours?"
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here comes $3 for this week, $3 for the next week. And then, I probably, you go to dad and say, "Well, Dad, who else do you know?" And so you rely on their network. Right.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
right.
then all of a sudden people are going on vacation in the summer, and then you're mowing a lawn, and then, once in a while the neighbor sees you mowing the lawn of their neighbor, and they go, "Oh, well, who are you?" And they say, "I'm going on vacation the next week." So it wasn't like this tremendous business, but it was like, hey, in 1982, I made a couple $100 mowing lawns, $5 or $6 a lawn.
That's
right.
That's
and
good, man.
that was pretty cool. So yeah, I could have just, stayed at home and slept in. No way, my parents were having that.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to what I was doing, and my older brother, a little bit older than me. And both of us were kind of like, there was a certain time in life where, like most kids, I guess we were kind of lazy and wanted to sleep in. But my dad would always come in the room on a Saturday morning, and we had these blinds, what do you call these, shades that you pull down that kind of go, if you pull them, they'll yank up and they'll just fly up, the old stuff. So he would come in the room and just yank those and let them fly up and go bang, on the top of the window. And we'd be like laying in bed. We had a bunk bed, and I'd be on the top, and my brother would be down there, and we'd be kind of like shocked. And he would like time to get up. And he didn't necessarily have stuff for us to do immediately. He just wanted us to not lay in bed all day on Saturday morning.
Right.
But there's a certain kind of work ethic that I think that I noticed that my brother got, and I got to some degree, but my brother really got this. He started working with my dad, and my dad showed him how to do things. And my dad was a plumber, so he would help him with his plumbing work, which was very, very helpful. And later, my brother started tinkering with stuff like radios and putting them back together and things like that. And before we knew it, he was interested in auto mechanics. And he ended up running while he was still in high school, he was running the auto mechanics, all the auto mechanics that were done at the Shell station that was near our house. And he was like the main mechanic.
Right.
And but I guess something in there changed in him, and I think in others, when they start to, maybe it's the father pushing a little bit, something like that. But did you notice anything? Did you notice maybe not having a work ethic, and all of a sudden did that job help create one, or am I exaggerating the case?
2 points I want to make. One is your story about the blinds.
Yeah.
Reminds me that right now I have a blinding light coming in my window, so I'm going to shut my blinds real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so work ethic and my parents, certainly, my brother and I, we still make fun of my dad from time to time. We'd be in Florida, and we had this huge magnolia tree in the front yard, and always dropping tons of these giant leaves and these little balls that have needles in them or whatever they were, the little bulbs.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to sweep that up, or we'd have to sweep up the pine needles from time to time from other trees. And, we would do the job, and we'd think we had it all done. And then my dad would come over with the rake, and he'd rake what we missed into a small pile, pick that up with the dustpan, and then be a smaller pile. Then he'd rake that up and put that, and it's like, until the pile was like this big, right? And so to this day, if my brother and I have to work in the garage and we're cleaning up some sawdust, we make fun of my father by making sure we sweep up the last little piece of dust, right? And
right.
Laughing at each other. But yeah, just little things like that type of work ethic, just doing yard work, seeing my dad doing yard work in Florida, 95 degrees, 95% humidity or whatever it is.
Brutal.
Sweating like crazy. And, we do 13, 15 minutes worth of work, and we think it's the end of the world.
Right.
We've been out there for 3 hours on a Saturday. Every morning, going to work at 7, getting up at 4, and then he was the Little League coach. And so
He showed you.
Sure. That's the whole point of what we were talking about earlier. You see that as a child, you don't even recognize what's happening.
Yeah.
You don't need your parents to teach you. You need your parents to show you.
Right.
You don't know that you don't know that's the case.
Yeah.
But when you become a parent, you realize that's the reality.
No, you got to show.
So having that mother and father in the home to show you both sides of love, tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so beautiful that it's really, in reality, in most of us probably say more than we really need to say instead of showing. But it's all you need. I agree 100%. And it's kind of a beautiful way that life has been laid out for us, that we don't need to badger kids. We just need to show them what the way is to go, and they see what we're doing or what we're not doing. And that's usually what comes through. It's not what we tell them, that's for sure. So let me ask you, okay, your first jobs were at, you had a McDonald's job. I worked for McDonald's for 2 years when I was in high school as well.
Okay.
They had a job called Lot and Lobby. Do you remember what that job was?
No.
That's how they started me. And that means you're in the lot and you're in the lobby and you're cleaning up.
Oh, God. Okay.
And then I also you probably did the same where you work counter or you work grill.
Yep.
Yeah. And counter was, those jobs are really hard. And those were some of well, I guess the worst in some ways. They were some of the toughest jobs I ever had, those low-wage beginning jobs. I worked for them and a company called Carl's Jr., which you have Hardee's in the South back here. But those were my first jobs, and they're not easy. I mean, working a counter where you've got angry people that want their food and they're waiting for it.
Right.
You've got to remember who's waiting for their food and whatnot. And then when you work the grill and you've got to keep things going, you're laying down burgers and then a whole group of people comes in and you're laying down another one and another one.
Right.
You're dropping fillet of fish. And I mean, it's a very complex job. It's no joke.
Yeah, nobody wants to see the bus of people coming down, traveling, getting out, because you've got 50 burgers to make in the heartbeat. You see that in the parking lot and everybody freaks out. Yeah. But that's the thing with those types of jobs, though, Patrick, is that they're not easy because it's hard work.
Yeah.
They're simple, right? And there's a reality in the world that those things that are simple have very low barriers to entry.
Yes.
And so that's why the wage is low.
Right.
If anybody can be taught how to do that job relatively easy.
That's right.
Then the wage will be low. That's just the reality of life. And nobody's ideally having that job at that level isn't meant to be the job you're supposed to have when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. You're supposed to start off with that job. And even if you stay in that environment, you become shift lead, shift manager, store manager, regional manager. There's opportunity for advancement, right? Nobody's expecting somebody to stay there for a long time.
Yeah.
But there's two stories. There's two things I remember from McDonald's. One statement was, if there's time to lean, there's time to clean.
Yes.
Right?
If there's time to lean, there's time to clean.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then I tell my kids this one story, and this is good for little brothers.
I didn't know that was a McDonald's thing, by the way.
I think it might be.
Yeah, I think it is now that you said it. It definitely is.
Yeah. But there's a story I tell my kids. They love to hear it. I tell them this. Every time I tell them, they laugh. And it's because I'm a little brother and I had an older brother who used to, be a little bit domineering.
Yep.
I get this. So these two kids came in and I was working the counter and it wasn't that busy. But they had eaten their meal already and their parents must have given them some money and said, go up and get a cone. Right. And so they come and get the cones. And as I'm making the first cone, I'm handing it to the little brother, but the big brother reaches up and grabs and said, I'll take that one.
Right.
Right. And so, normal cone like that high. So I come back then for the little brother, his ice cream cone's like this high. Right. And the look on the big brother's face as it was just priceless. That was with all the beatings I had ever taken from my older brother for 15 years.
That's hilarious. You're a younger brother as well, you said?
Oh, yeah. I have an older brother. He's 3.5 years older. Yeah.
I had 3.5 years. Okay. I have an older brother who's 18 months, 1 year and a half older than me. And he used to beat the hell out of me. I think I can say this. He might, I don't think he'll get mad at me. It's years ago, man. So right. I'm just saying, but that's what older brothers do. But if anybody else mess with me, no.
Oh yeah. That's exactly.
Yeah. So
you can beat me, nobody else can.
Exactly. He has ownership. So, by the way, it reminded me one other thing about the fast food thing. We used to have an In-N-Out burger. We don't have In-N-Out burgers in the South. That's one thing we miss here.
Right.
You guys are lucky. But we had an In-N-Out burger. My first date, by the way, I was in 5th grade. I took a girl to In-N-Out. I thought that was pretty special.
You still remember her name?
Yeah, I do. But I won't say. But anyway, the guys at In-N-Out, speaking of you can move up the ladder, so to speak, the guys that work for In-N-Out was kind of cool. McDonald's, we had to wear these funny little hats, and we had to say the same little phrases to people when they came, hi, can I take your order? And it's a wonderful day, I got to take your order.
Right.
I forgot what it was. I always thought was cool about In-N-Out burger is they would just say, how you doing? You'd come up and they say, how you doing? It was so like, hey bro, what's up? And they were allowed to do that. And I thought that was so cool. And they also didn't have to upsell you on everything. You know how like when you're at McDonald's or other places, they have to upsell you. Would like a large fry with that? Would you like a jumbo, whatever? It's like enough, And I don't remember those guys trying to upsell me. So I kind of appreciated that. And a lot of those guys, they got paid a lot, by the way. I'm not trying to do a commercial for In-N-Out, although I do love In-N-Out. But they got paid a lot, but they also went into management and things like that when they were still in high school. And I thought that was really cool. These guys were working in what I thought was a cool job and working up the ladder even while they were still in school.
Yeah, there's a certain level of status and hierarchy between different fast food chains. Right.
Yes.
If you work at Taco Bell, that's level 1.
Right.
If you work at In-N-Out, that's level 2. Before you know it, you might get to Starbucks. Right. And that's considered, hey, that's a cush job, right?
Right. Exactly. That's right. So, next thing I want to mention is I'm just moving it forward here because of time. I want to mention Amway. Now, I know that you said that Amway was like a major life, and I'll let you talk about that in a minute, but I just want to say, I don't think I was ever in Amway, but I've told this often to people. Both of my brothers were in Amway. And I have to say, both of them got major boosts being in Amway. Exactly what you said, they got in Amway too. Because with Amway, it's not just the product or whatever. It's not really even the products in a way. It's the system. And it's the building up of a person's, let's call it their personal, what do you call that? Their personal growth, I guess you would call it. But it has to do with the books that you read and the tapes that you listen to and the mentors that you work with and things like that. Amway, and my brothers had a little bit of success with it, but mainly I just saw, particularly my older brother, really grow as a human being because he had to get out and make presentations in front of people, and he had to make sure he groomed. I'm not saying he was a bad groom. Maybe I just said that. But he had to groom appropriately. He had to do certain things, and he had to act like a professional person. And it was powerful. I mean, I remember watching them and just being really kind of in awe of that and saying, and I'd hear people along the way say, oh, multi-level marketing or what they call network marketing is, it's no good. It's blah, blah, blah. And I always would defend it because I always knew that it built your sales and particularly your people skills, kind of like from the inside out in a certain kind of way, in a way that were valuable. So when you mentioned to me that you worked in Amway too and how valuable it was to you, I totally got and appreciated that.
Yeah, I think the story that I wrote you in that little bio that you requested was, look, I never made a penny in Amway, right? And I don't know how many thousands of dollars I spent trying to make a penny. Not a ton, it wasn't like I was going broke, but, I probably purchased over 100 different audio cassette tapes, right, which were speeches of successful people that had achieved something in that business, or guest speakers that they brought in that would talk about success principles.
Yeah.
As a young 20-something, I was relatively impressionable. Yeah. So I took that information and I applied it, right? And not only that, I would literally get a tape and I would listen to the tape 10 times, right? I would listen to 5 hours of tape a week every day when I'm driving to school at a 23-mile commute. to Sac State.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And so when I was going to university, an hour there, an hour back, 4 or 5 days a week, depending on how my class schedule was. And that's what I listened to. I wasn't listening to rock and roll or talk radio. It was just embedding positive messages into my mind. And then at the same time, in that 2-year period, I don't know how many books I read, maybe 30, 40 different books, you know.
I wish that I had done more of that. I mean, I spent a lot of time commuting in jobs that I've had, especially in the Southern Cal area. I spent a lot of time. I'm not saying all time spent listening to talk radio is a waste, but when you just mentioned that, I thought recently more and more about this, how much time I spent almost like overtraining a certain kind of my mind and maybe undertraining another part of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all have a certain amount of time in our day, right? You know, it's probably true that based on somebody's commute, they could probably learn how to speak another language, right?
Yeah.
Over a few years just by listening and being that wacko in their car talking to themselves to a Spanish tape, right? Or to a German tape, learning how to speak, right? With so much time we spend in our cars, right? A little less now with people working from home so much. But the point is, that group of people at that organization understood that our bodies are a machine, just like nobody doubts this information when it comes to food. You know, if you put healthy fruits and vegetables in your body as a machine will produce better results.
Yeah.
But we want to fight it when it comes to the spiritual or the mind realm, right? If you put positive things in your mind, positive things should come out. It's basically the law of the world, right? Every religion has it. You have the yin and yang. You have karma, right? Cause and effect. Jesus put it this way: as you sow, so shall you reap. Whatever you put in is what you should expect to get out. I mean, it's not a perfect system, but by and large, you can do that with an individual, or you can do that with a group. Whatever the decisions that America makes as a whole unit, we will reap the rewards of those decisions. Right? And the same as an individual. And so Amway taught me that you have to take personal responsibility. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do the hard things that you don't want to do in order to have the good things you want to have. And I tell that to my kids all the time. I think it was one of these guys, Zig Ziglar, who used to say that. You have to do the things you don't want to do in order to have the things you want to have. Yeah. If I start that sentence, my kids will finish it for you because I tell them that at least once a month. Right?
Yeah.
And that's what they taught me. And so then when I finally, after 2 years of reading all that, after trying to sell something that a lot of people fought against because nobody really wants change in their life, and that's a mistake, right? But I was, 22 years old, 21 years old, whatever the age was, and I was up on a whiteboard drawing, circles saying, you too can have this if you do these things. Yes. And I was speaking to people twice my age at times, meeting them at a restaurant to do the same thing. There's a lot of growth. I went from a very shy kind of, non-professional individual to showing up with a white shirt and a tie and shoes that match my belt, just very basic stuff, right?
Beautiful.
And when I finally graduated college and got out into the real world, it was so easy.
Yeah.
Because I had already had all that training. It was priceless.
It became a habit too.
Yes, it was so much. Look, the training that I got from Amway was 5 times better than the training I got from my California State University.
Wow.
Right?
Mike, hold it right there because I'm getting something that says the meeting is going to end. We were talking about Amway, and I don't know if you remember exactly where you stopped, but you're talking about the value of Amway and getting in front of people when you were 22 or whatever it was, and what the value of having. You also mentioned doing things that you didn't necessarily want to do for the result that you wanted.
Yeah, so I mean that's the secret to success, right? I mean, all things being equal, the individual that's willing to do the things they don't want to do is going to typically achieve with those that don't. And when I got into technical recruiting and to consulting sales and for technology, I don't have a technical degree. I have a business degree, right?
Right.
And so one of the things that set me apart was there was this bookstore about 3 blocks away from my office in the heart of Silicon Valley called Digital Guru Bookstore.
Okay.
Right? It's pretty well known for those individuals that were in that domain in the 90s, right? Prior to the internet even being started, for the most part, from a widely used tool.
Yeah.
So I would be talking to these individuals, software design engineers or electrical engineers designing semiconductor chips, and they would tell me different terms that they would, the terminology was vast and it was new to me. So when I would hear of a new technology, I didn't know about it, I'd go down to the bookstore. I'd literally buy a textbook. I'd spend 70 or 80 bucks of my own money so I could understand that technology.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I wouldn't read that textbook as a student would take a university class, but I would always be able to read the first 2 or 3 chapters because it was setting an overview of what they were going to learn in the next 20 chapters. And I could grasp that.
Yeah.
But once the page started becoming mathematical equations and other things that were highly complex, and I didn't have the prerequisite for, I just left the book. But I would read the first 2 or 3 chapters of these different technology books. And I was spending my own money for this. My company wasn't reimbursing me.
Right.
And so these were things you learn. You figure out, well, if I want to be better than the next guy, then I have to be imaginative and I have to go do the thing I don't want to do. It's the same thing we were talking about earlier. Competition either creates a situation where you curl up in a ball and suck your thumb, or you say, I've got to compete, and you figure out a way to compete. And I ended up being one of the top producers out of about 100 different competitors in my same position at that company every year for 8 years.
That's
right?
because of you were willing to take the extra step.
Yeah, it wasn't just the knowledge that I had from those books. It was the fact that I was willing to do that was just testament to that character I was taught from my family, my parents, and from organizations like Amway. And so that's kind of where I'll leave that, is that, yeah, it's been a tremendous boost. And so I would tell anybody, if you're young or if you want to achieve more, even if you're older, do something that is sales oriented, that requires you to achieve a result, right, where it's 100% on you, even though the risk of failure is high. Just do something where the risk of financial loss is low. So network marketing makes that easy, right? So learn and cut your teeth in that environment where it costs a couple $100.
Yeah, that's a nice way to do it. That makes a lot of sense.
I would like, so when we were on break, that was nice because there was one thought I wanted to have about how we started this whole conversation. I don't want to necessarily repeat all this, but we're talking about the importance of 2-parent homes.
Yes.
I do want to state that there are a lot of individuals that are doing well that are still in 1-parent homes, right?
Right.
It's not so much that you have to have a 2-parent home, although that is probably the top of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
There's different levels, but at least be involved. If you have that child and you're divorced or you were never married to begin with, whether you're man or woman, put your life on hold. Your life means nothing anymore. Live your life for the success of that next generation and be heavily involved in that child's life, and that child will still be a huge advantage over those who don't do that for their children. Well,
yeah, you're right. I mean, look at Ben Carson's mother, for instance. That's a perfect example. But a lot of people don't want to do that, though. So is there any way to get through to that person, a single parent who may...
I don't know. I think I don't know that you can get through to anybody. I think that it has to come from within, and either they choose to do it or not. Everybody has that same path to choose. They can choose the path of bitterness and excuse, or they can choose the path of hard work in the face of difficult circumstances, knowing that a long-term process will bring about great results.
Yeah.
Right? There's no quick fix. Right. And that's why you almost have to say, I'm throwing part of my life away in order for the next generation to have tremendous success. Right? Either you have that or you don't. And that goes on with life. It's just like in athletics. You were athletic when you were younger.
Yeah.
two guys equally as talented. One surpasses the other because of work ethic. It's just a choice.
Yeah. I had an insane work ethic when I was younger, and well, still do in some ways. But and that's always been able to, you're always able to get further that way. Let me ask you something about the work that you do. You're in software, and you're in the Silicon Valley type of job, and you were talking about learning certain things on when something new came out, but you didn't have to necessarily learn it to the nth degree, but you had to get a grounding in it. So for you, how much have you had to know technically to do what you do versus just work ethic, general knowledge, let's say?
In my industry, you have to know nothing about technology. I teach my salespeople technology if they don't have it. I mean, most people know the basics, right? Because we're not designing anything. We're not building anything. We are hunting. That's why we're called headhunters. We are hunting for the talent who knows how to do that. But we should at least have enough domain knowledge through study and through conversations to be able to have an intelligent conversation to know if that individual, when we see their resume profile, if it matches what the customer's looking for. So it's not highly technical, but there are definitely levels. You can get more technical, the more technical you can get. And then combined with sales effort, will then achieve some results. So I don't require any technical knowledge. I can teach that so long as somebody's willing. And to me, a willing participant's the best employee. Like when I put my job description out looking for salespeople for my company, it says, about ASICSoft, job description, skills desired, and then education. I always say the same thing, if you have an education, we won't hold that against you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't care. If you can sell, you can work for my company. If we have the budget to afford a new employee, I don't look for education.
Yeah, I hear a lot of times successful people in certain businesses, we're kind of joking about holding it against you, but they'll kind of say in some ways it can work against you because you already have ingrained habits that have to be unbroken. They have to be broken by the way you do things in your company.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you have two people and one person has a degree and one doesn't, maybe you give an edge to the individual that has the degree. I'm not saying that education is not worth something, right? It's highly valuable, and there are certain industries where education is crazy important. You don't want self-taught doctors, right?
Right.
You don't want self-taught pilots.
Right.
Just not somebody. That's not the plane I'm getting on.
Right.
But the point is that there's a whole vast array of different types of work that you can do, and people can have crazy success without it.
Yeah.
Work ethic is more important than the education.
And attitude.
Right?
Attitude, work ethic, right?
One of the most successful friends of mine, we were roommates before we got married. We both were living in this giant home, and the downstairs 4 bedrooms was rented to 4 bachelors from the local church that the family belonged to. And those 4 bedrooms surrounded this giant bonus room with a pool table and cruise bowl. It was a pretty cool environment. And his name was Andy. And Andy was the only one without a college degree. And Andy was working for a company just going around spraying bugs. He was I guess they call that an exterminator.
Yeah.
Then he started his own company. While we were there, he started his own gig, right? And was living living in a bedroom, paying $400 a month or whatever ridiculously low amount it was at that time, driving an old beat up truck with some equipment in the back. And after about 5 years of doing that, he had 8 or 10 trucks out, and he was just ultimately bored. I don't know what to do with myself. I have other people that I'm paying well that are providing for their family, and I am simply just making sure that they're showing up to the customer on time. And then I go golfing, I go to the beach with my family or whatever. But yeah, no education to that, no college degree. And probably one of the most successful people I know. He's just killing it.
And he had, if we were to look back, he would have in his background probably a lot of the same things you mentioned in his background somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of that comes. Sports can generate a lot of that work ethic.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I'll say is it's so silly. I had another business for a while, and it was a tremendous failure. It was a magazine that I published, but I met the general manager of a local Ferrari dealer because I was trying to get them to take out ads in my magazine. And this guy was from Italy, and he told me, he goes, we were having coffee. He goes, Mike, people in America, I don't know why they don't try to go on their own more often, right? He goes, in Italy, we have 20+% unemployment, right? If you lose your job, you may not work for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
If you're working at a company and decide you want to start your own business, and you quit your job, and your business fails, well, then in 2 weeks you got another job.
You start another one.
The risk of failure, or the downside of what that failure means to somebody in America is so small. I just don't know why more people don't try more things.
Well, my guess would be the education system as it stands now doesn't really promote that.
Well, I also think that people are just afraid, right? As soon as you try to do something on your own, everybody that you know starts counseling you against it. But every person that you know is average.
Yeah.
Right? And we listen to all the average people, right? And that was the same thing, that if you go into, if I was preaching Amway right now saying, hey, you should join, everybody would turn this off and say, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking, right? Because nobody wants to hang out with individuals that are going someplace. They want to hang out with the people at the bottom of the mountain. As soon as the guy gets halfway up, they call him an idiot. It's only at the top, they say.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. That's true. Great points, man.
Hey, when you get up that mountain, you might fall down, but that's okay.
That's okay.
At least you played the game.
But that's a great point about people being comfortable. Most people are comfortable with, like if you fail, they're more comfortable with you than if you succeed, because then they can look at themselves and why are they not succeeding? Right.
Look, and individuals who have a career and they want to follow that path, that's great, right? There are a lot of wonderful ways you can do that, and you create cash flow when you take that and you invest.
Sure.
And you create your own business through investments, and that's good too.
Yeah.
It's just that there are a lot of individuals who I think ought to try to break those chains more so than we do.
I agree 100%. Let me, because of time, we're moving quickly here. I just want to ask you a few more things. We'll wind up. In terms of productivity, we haven't really talked about productivity. We have in a roundabout way, but more directly, are there things that you do that you can pass on to somebody that maybe habit-oriented, like habits that you've developed, or maybe productivity tools or hacks or whatever? Are there anything that kind of comes to mind of saying, yeah, I've learned this, I do this as a habit now, or I'm using particular tools that are really helpful?
So all I can tell somebody is what I think they ought to do. Like I tell and to me it comes back to this. Whatever you put in your mind is what you're going to get out on the other end, right? So if you put nothing but a bunch of silly sitcoms in your mind, and it's okay to watch silly TV once in a while, right? If you're listening to just nothing but music or radio, you have to put things in your mind from audio, visual, and reading. That's what I would say to do. Readers are leaders was the old Amway term, right? But all I can do is say that works, right? And almost every business successful person will tell you they're readers, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny. I've got 7 salespeople that work at my company, and I tell them to read. I even give them the titles of books to read, but I don't force them to, right?
Sure.
But rarely do they do it. And it's amazing. I just continually see turnover of individuals who are just, getting C minus grade at my company. And every once in a while, somebody will do great. But the amount of turnover I see in sales is high. And because everybody assumes they can just do it.
Yeah.
Right?
They can win.
Yeah. It's just, but I would tell anybody if they want to have better productivity, then do things that increase your odds. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but if you read good things, then good things will happen.
Yeah, that's true. And also keeping up. There's another side of reading, which is keeping up with things. Trends are always moving, especially these days. I mean, so part of reading is keeping up with what's going on in business.
Right.
So
exactly.
Okay, so that's good advice, man. Any other advice that you want to give? General advice to anybody who wants to really looking to succeed in this world, kind of tired of failure?
Leave the excuses, right? Yeah. But look, the average person would rather have an excuse because it makes them sleep better.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's why everybody, so many people that we meet are on some sort of antidepressant drug. They need this, they need that to cope. And everybody has, well, you don't know my situation. My situation, I really need this, or I really need that. At the end of the day, people don't want solutions, because if there's a solution, then that means they have to go work to put that solution into practice.
Yeah.
And people would rather be mediocre and just have enough than to push themselves to the next level. A lot of successful people in the world, but most successful people are kind, they're generous, they're hardworking, and they do the things they don't want to do. And they're not bitter and they don't complain, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Because that's not what is taught. Now it's in vogue to say that people who have succeeded have somehow cheated and gotten their ill-gotten gain.
It's a lot easier to have a boogeyman over there somewhere that is the bane of your existence than to say, I don't care how many boogeymen there are, I'm still going to go and be successful.
Amen.
Right? You can have a choice. I mean, take Booker T. Washington. That's who started this thing up. That guy could have had a million excuses, but he says, the excuses aren't going to help me. What's the point?
Yeah.
Right. Even if we took the position that life sucked for him and for that class of people, for that race of people at that time, you had the choice: wallow in it or go work your ass off.
Yeah. Amen, man.
You chose the latter. Yeah.
Amen. That's a great way to end it. I love that. And Mike, is there anything you want to promote in your business or anything right now that you're working on that in closing?
If you need technology staff, call ASICSoft. ASICSoft.
Oh, that's basic and to the point, man.
Right? That's it.
Mike, I want to thank you. I think it's very valuable stuff today. It's a lot of what I'd hoped it to be. It has been. So I appreciate your time and your wisdom and your knowledge that's based on, I know, a lifetime of experiences. So not everyone's going to have your experience. Obviously, none of us has the same experience anybody else has. But we can always take something that makes sense to us out of each experience. And I think that there's plenty here that people can dig into to help them be a success in their life. So I want to thank you so much for being with me today, man.
Well, you bet. And I would say, anybody watching this, continue to go to old school.
Go to old school.
Right. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Patrick and his family. And against all odds, that guy, you're killing it. So congratulations.
Thank you, man. I'm going to let you go. And I'm just going to close out here as well. So thanks again, Mike, for being here. Okay.
All right. Take care.
All right. That was my friend and successful dude all around, Mike Chandler. And Mike's a great guy. And I really hope, and I know that you've got some great benefit here today. So I hope that you watch this and hopefully watch it all the way through and really get some great nuggets to how to be successful, particularly right now with so many challenges that we have in today's world going against us. But no matter how many challenges we have, I know that we can always overcome those challenges. So go to oldschoolus.com for more information on what I'm doing at Old School. Old School is the best information in natural health, success, as we dealt with today, and freedom. And they all go together, and they all are in very, very short supply in today's America and around the world. Let me know if you have any comments about today's show. Send it around so other people know about it. And let's get success and make success in vogue again today. We need it more than ever. Thanks again for being with me. I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on Old School with Patrick Rooney. Visit oldschoolus.com to find out more about natural health, success, and freedom. See you next time.